Hello there friends, this week, and in 2 days in fact, Sony will be unveiling the PS5, formally, because apparently 2 Wired articles and a TED Talk isn't enough to unveil a console. They actually have to do it with video games and what the thing looks like. I think there's an important conversation to be had around console reveals. I think a thing that too many console manufacturers fall into, a trap that they fall into, is that they fail to manage expectations. And I'm going to talk about that because I think it's so important, and basically every single failing in this entire console marketing cycle so far, because we're into a new generation, which is very exciting, a whole new generation of technology to fuel our video games and a whole new generation of video games to play, and I think both Microsoft and Sony have struggled with managing expectations. They've struggled with keeping people in line with what they're actually revealing and what they're actually talking about, because you understand, console reveals are very exciting times. A whole new cycle of consoles, a whole new cycle of features, a whole new cycle of game reveals, and all of the stuff that comes with it, all of the marketing hype that comes with that. We only get it every 6 or 7 years, so when it comes around, people very much anticipate it. So expectations and what people want goes through the roof. And we've seen both. I'll go through Sony, Microsoft, and then talk a little about Nintendo at the end, because I think Nintendo has offered very valuable lessons to be learned from in their recent past. We'll start with Sony. As I said, they revealed the PS5 specs in 2 separate interviews with Wired, which was very strange. Then they formally just tweeted, oh yeah, it's called PS5. And then they had, I think, the most baffling forward-facing marketing event I've ever seen in my life, which was Mark Cerny's GDC talk, which was cancelled. It was meant to take place at GDC, and he spent an hour talking about the technical specifications of the PlayStation 5 in such obtuse, dense, techie terms that I have no idea why they aired that to the public. I understand what it was meant to be. It was originally meant to be at GDC. It was originally meant to be for game developers. So it's understandable that there, in that environment, that he was going to go deep into the weeds and tell you about how the sound will adjust to your ears so you'll hear it better, and that they've scanned people's ears and created sound prototypes to match the mass market, and how there'll be magic load times and everything will be loaded in and all these things will happen, and they'll be able to load tons and tons of things at once, so that when the player turns around, in the time it takes them to turn around, you can load the entire world behind them, which is all very fancy and very cool in theory. But that's what it was. It was theory. It was sitting there and watching a theory class on the PlayStation 5 instead of an in-practice, what can this system do? Which was such a weird and I think bad move, because it was the first thing they've really said about the PS5. It was the first thing they opened their mouth and said, this is our quote-unquote reveal of the PlayStation 5. And it was neither a reveal nor a mention of the PlayStation 5. No sign of the console, no sign of the controllers, and most importantly, no sign of games. Which again, if you're going to GDC is fine, because again, you're talking to developers who speak that language. If you're putting this on the Sony YouTube channel as one of the first key pieces of media promoting the PS5, you completely miss the expectations people have for something like that. You completely misunderstood what people want from the first market. Even this would be fine forward facing if it was 2 months after you've revealed a bunch of games, so that you can say, we've dramatically reduced load times and here's what that looks like. Or we can load in all that, and here's what that looks like. So that when you say that, people go, oh, that's actually really cool. This is the generational leap I've been expecting. So they have their reveal event, their official formal reveal event, which hopefully is not a TED Talk, this Thursday, and I hope that goes down well. I hope they've learned from the errors of their ways with their very long... And the Mark Cerny Tech Talk will be very interesting to go back and watch, probably in 3 years. But in isolation, it's just, as I said, completely missed the mark of what people are looking for in marketing for a new machine. And I honestly can't believe it cleared Sony marketing, that the entire marketing department is yeah, let's put this out there. Before we put out games, before we've shown you what the damn box looks like, before we show you what the controller looks like, before we've given you any practical information about the machine, we're going to tell you all of this deep theoretical and conceptual ideas behind the formation of the PlayStation 5, which is a choice. And a choice that didn't go down so well. Xbox have had a similar problem, where they revealed it last year in theory. They said the Xbox Series X, or well, it was named later, but the Xbox Series X is coming fall 2020 with Halo. And then at the Game Awards, they showed you the box, and it was a nice box. It looked like a PC. Sure, why not? And then they had their official, quote unquote, gameplay reveal. Which, if they just unveiled a bunch of games, it would be fine. But they called it the official Xbox Series X gameplay reveal. Again, setting expectations at the level that when we watch this, when we sit down and look at this Xbox Series X gameplay reveal, we will see the next generation of video games. We will see video games that could not be made on the Xbox One, could not be made on the PlayStation 4, sure couldn't be made on the Nintendo Switch. When we look at those games, we'll be wowed and floored, and they'll have Assassin's Creed there, the first gameplay of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Oh, all very exciting. And then that thing came and went, and boy was it a dud. Because there were some interesting looking games. Not all the games were bad, but they didn't look like, the generational leap kind of games you would expect. It just looked like more Xbox One games. And then they showed the Assassin's Creed gameplay, which was, I'm sure it was in-engine, I suppose, if they want to get away with it that way, but it was the furthest thing from what people would expect from Assassin's Creed gameplay. Again, completely misreading the expectations of the room. When you say this is the reveal of games for the next generation, you have to meet that standard. You can't just show stuff that looks like stuff that could be running on this current generation systems. You have to show stuff that's mind-blowing, which brings us, interestingly, because Sony missed the mark. Xbox, I liked the Game Awards thing. I thought that was a really good surprise, especially on a platform like the Game Awards, which has they usually say 40 million people watching or some insane number like that. Then along came Epic Games, which were the first people, the Epic Games Unreal Engine 5 demo, was the first thing that you looked at and you're like, oh, next gen, I get it. This looks very cool. It didn't look much like a game at times, and it still had that horrible waddling your way through a crevice while everything loads, which I would have hoped we were past that in the next generation, but alas. But it looked very nice, it looked very cool, it looked like there was a lot going on, and it looked like the generational leap one would expect. So it's very interesting that Sony hasn't gotten there yet, but of course, the big test for Sony is on Thursday. That's the official reveal, where one would assume we'll learn about games, and probably most importantly, we'll learn about price, which I think will be a big thing with the PS5. Xbox missed the mark with their quote-unquote gameplay reveals, and then Epic came along and delivered something that actually looked like the next generation. And the reason I want to bring up Nintendo is because I think Nintendo learned these lessons the hard way. I think Nintendo learned how to manage expectations pretty masterfully across the Wii U era, because they so consistently didn't meet expectations throughout the Wii U era. They revealed the Wii U, people didn't know what it was, people thought it was a Wii peripheral instead of a new console. The console released, it was a financial flop. But then, they regrouped, they sat down, they made the Nintendo Switch, and then they said, alright, how do we learn from our mistakes? How do we release this new system in a way that will actually have people buy it? And if you go back and watch the first Nintendo Switch reveal trailer, I think that's one of the most elegant pieces of console marketing that has ever been made. You watch that 3-minute ad, and you see it's a home console you can take on the go, you understand what it is, it has the frankly almost deep hidden messaging switch click noise, which worms its way into your brain, and most importantly probably, it had The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and a new 3D Mario game, both coming within the first 6 months of the console's launch. So they looked at what went wrong with the Wii U, not enough good games early enough, and people didn't know what it was. So they solved that. Breath of the Wild Day 1, what more could you want? Form factor and unique selling point, clear as day, and big Mario game coming soon. And Nintendo, I think, have carried those lessons about expectations through everything they do. When there's a direct that they know is a direct that will fall below expectations, they release it as a Nintendo Direct Mini. They did that this year, did that a couple of years ago, where they're we don't have enough for a full Nintendo Direct, and we know it. So instead of, still doing a Direct, we'll just drop it randomly on a random day, and people will be fine with it. Because we didn't let people build up anticipation, we didn't let people, enhance their expectations. They managed expectations by not letting any expectations exist at all. So I think it's very important, everything Sony and Microsoft do with regard to the Xbox and the PS5, people are scrutinizing every word. So if you want to manage expectations, you got to be clear, you've got to communicate exactly what every reveal will be, and probably more importantly, what it won't be, and you've got to make sure that people understand what makes these devices new and different and special, and show that to them. Don't just tell them. Don't just like roll out a teraflop number, because that's meaningless. No one knows what a teraflop is. People will argue about to the end of time about teraflops. Nobody knows what a teraflop is. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the Sony reveal. I'm looking forward, because next month we also have the Xbox first party reveal, which I think they should have led with, because that's how you meet expectations, with your own stuff that you've been presumably developing for a couple years for this system now. But, you know, what do I know? It is probably important on the other side of that. Like, companies need to manage expectations, they need to communicate clearly, they need to tell people what all of this is and why it matters. But probably we have to manage expectations on the other side of that. Like, there is one very reasonable, realistic expectation everybody should have, which is these are devices that are probably going to cost $500 to $700, give or take. And I think it's very reasonable to look at them and ask the question, why is this new? Why is this different? Why should I spend that money? Those are very reasonable expectations. Everyone knows you don't get Red Dead Redemption 2 in the first year of a console. Like, everyone knows that. The games released in the first year of the Xbox Series X or the PS5 aren't probably going to be the most revolutionary, brilliant looking games, unless you're Ubisoft, who can weirdly just like roll out Far Cry and Assassin's Creed games like there's no tomorrow. They really hit those console launches. Ubisoft, they're a very smart company. But for the most part, you don't get the big, like, genre-defining games, you don't get the big generation-defining games in the first year of a system's life cycle. Those generally take time as people get used to the hardware and understand how they can get the most out of it. So I think it's important to temper those expectations. That, you know, the games we see probably in the first year of these systems won't be the biggest, most mind-blowing games you've ever seen in your life. It's probably going to be small quality of life improvements before they eventually get all they can out of these systems. But it is perfectly fair to look at these systems and say, you know, what's new? What's generationally different that the PS4 couldn't do? And I don't think they've communicated that. Either Sony or Microsoft have communicated that so far. So that's what I'm looking for from PlayStation on Thursday and from Xbox next month. What is generationally different? Manage expectations, people. It's so important. It's like, if you tell people what to expect and then you exceed expectations, people think you're brilliant. If you let expectations run out of control and then you don't meet those expectations, your console ends up hitting the market with a bit of a whimper. So yeah, that's my little rant on expectation management in the video games industry. It's a thing I've had in my mind for a while now, and I think it's been particularly pertinent in the reveal and subsequent launch of these consoles. But nonetheless, Sony on Thursday, I'm very excited. Thank you so much for watching. On your left, my retrospective review of Final Fantasy VII. On your right, my 10-year anniversary review of Super Mario Galaxy 2. You can follow me on Twitter at GarrettKidneyGA or ETTKIDNEY. Come back on Thursday night where I'll have some thoughts and reactions to the PS5 reveal. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.